Hello there and welcome to Black Jackal Gaming. Today we're going to take a look at the Balance Dataslate, which is the March 25 Dataslate. GW have come out the gate and stated that Space Marines are in a good place. We have had an Alpha Moment update, a couple of datasheet ability changes to go through, and there's been point changes in both directions. So let's take a look at them. Taking a look at the Alpha Moment update, they've now added additional wording, so if you're using a Codex Space Marines detachment, add one to the wound roll, and it has to be using one of the following detachments: Goddess Task Force, Anvil Siege Force, Iron Storm Spearhead, Firestorm Assault Force, Stormlance Task Force, Vanguard Spearhead, or First Company Task Force, as well as the Librarius Conclave from Grotmus. You can now not use any of the supplement detachments and still gain the +1 to wound. So they've pretty much put this in line with how it was intended to use, but a couple of naughty people decided to do a couple of other things with it. Looking at the datasheet updates, first up we got Uriel Fentress's ability. So previously, in the formation step, if you included this model, you could select one Astartes infantry unit from your army, and that unit would gain the Deep Strike ability. They've changed this to only include Phobos, Gravis, or Tacticus units. This means you can no longer do it on Centurions, which was the main unit that it was used on. So they're definitely given a bit of a nerf there. Next we have the Lieutenant in Phobos armor. So their ability is in the shooting phase after the mortal unit has shot if it's not within engagement range of one or more enemy units. Previously it was D6 inches, so this has changed to 6 inches, which is quite nice. But if it does until the end of the turn, it is not eligible to declare a charge. So they're taking away a couple of movement shenanigans there. They made it more consistent by making it 6 inches rather than D6 inches, but you can't charge afterwards now. Stormlance Task Force has had a change to one of the stratagems. So the Windswift Evasion stratagem, they've changed the target now. So previously it was an Astartes unit. They've now changed this to an Astartes infantry or mounted unit. This allows you to make a 6-inch move. So if an enemy unit makes a normal advance or fallback move within 9 inches of a unit, you can make a move up to 6 inches. So they've just clarified that this is only for infantry and mounted units. They don't want you to be moving things like ballistas, dreadnoughts, as it's meant to be geared towards getting into cover or getting out of the way quickly for fast units. Taking a look at the points changes. First we have the ballistas, which has gone up 10 points to 140 points. We've seen a lot of play on the tabletop and it was really efficient for its points, so it has gone up. Blade Guard veterans, which weren't seeing much play at all, they've gone down 10 points, so it's 80 points for 3 models or 160 points for 6. The Centurion Devastator squad has gone down. This is due to no longer being able to give them Deep Strike. So they've gone down 15 points. So it's 165 for 3 or 330 points for 6. Now this is just rolling back a previous nerf where they went up. I believe it was around 25 points. So they're not gone back down to the level they were prior to people using this ability. So it's a little bit of a shame that they didn't fully take this back down, because you weren't really seeing too many Centurion Devastators that weren't using the Deep Strike. Company of Heroes, a very popular option, has gone up by 10 points to 105 points. It's a bit disappointing really, because he was mainly used with Calgar, because it made a very tough unit. But if you're not using it within Calgar, 105 points is getting toward probably quite pricey. Calgar himself has gone up an additional 10 points, so he now comes in at 210 points. For some reason, the Predators have gone up in points. The Annihilator has gone up by 5 points to 135, and the Destructor has gone up by 10 points to 140. Now, this seems to be across the board that a lot of the Predators have gone up, so it just feels like a bit of a copy and paste rather than a targeted approach, seeing which different armies are getting the most out of the Predators. You're not seeing much use of Predators on the tabletop. For them to go up to points is a little bit strange when it was mostly in some of the Chaos armies where they were doing the most damage. The Vindicator, which was just starting to get popular, has gone up 10 points to 185 points. The Whirlwind, which hasn't seen much play for a long time because it's hit multiple nerfs in both points and the changes to indirect, has gone up 10 points to 190 points. There's been a decrease in points for the Fire Discipline. This has gone down 15 points to 25 points. It really should have taken this reduction in points when it had the update at the last Balance Dataslate, where you lost the ability to critically hit on a 5+. So this is just bringing it in line to where it should be really for what it offers. And finally, in the Librarius Conclave, the Fusillade enhancement has gone up a whopping 20 points to 35 points, probably around where it should be. So what needed to change and didn't get it. Take a look at the thing that probably is the most glaring omission. And like every single time, it's the First Company Task Force. This has been dead on arrival since the Codex landed. It really serves a very limited to no purpose whatsoever, and it's a very strange detachment. The fact that they haven't looked at this and seen that it's probably never once been played competitively and thought maybe we should tweak it is quite frankly getting ridiculous at this point. We're at the point now where both Terminator squads have had a points reduction twice. Stern Guard Veteran have had a points reduction and a rework of the ability, and now Blade Guard Veterans have gone down in points as well, and it's still not going to make anyone play this detachment. The problem that it's got is that the targeted units, the veteran units, they're just much more efficient in other detachments. You're going to get more use out of them in the likes of the Gladius than just using them in this detachment. And not only that, you get the access to enhancements and stratagems target more units rather than just the veteran units, so you got a much more flexibility. And the damage dealing units are the ones you want to be targeting rather than these three. A couple of small tweaks would really help, but you don't need to put too much work in it to make it usable. So the detachment rule is pretty rubbish. At the moment, once per game, your Oaths of Moment can re-roll the wounds as well. Now that we've got +1 to the wound roll, this isn't really that worthwhile. It wouldn't be breaking the bank to change that this is every turn Oaths of Moment as full reroll, but it's only for your veteran unit. The enhancements are a little bit on the pricey side for what you get, and most of the abilities are the character gets a little bump, and once a game, the rest of the unit gets a little bump. So just change that and make it all game long. A couple of them might need a minor points tweak, 5-10 points here, but it's going to make them much more usable. The stratagems are pretty rubbish. They almost solely rely on you being below strength or below half strength. And then the stratagems, they basically just get you to have the same output as if you were at full strength, so it's not really giving that much to you. They really just need to knock these requirements on the head and give you the stratagems based on your unit gets this just for using the stratagem. If they make those minor changes, it'd be a solid detachment. It wouldn't be there out the world, it wouldn't be meta breaking, but it'd be a good fun detachment to play if you like using more things like Terminators. So where does this leave Space Marines after the updates? It was a bit of a strange statement from GW to state that Space Marines were in a good place, and then they hit them with quite a few nerfs. There was datasheet nerfs and there was a lot of point increases, which was a bit strange when they say they're in a good place. In a good place kind of sounds like there's just going to be a little bit of internal balance. So a couple of things might go up, but more things will come down. Maybe there'll be a couple of detachments that see changes, but they really didn't address it in that way at all. Typical of GW, as soon as Space Marine list does well, it tends to get hit quite hard. Now, the list that John Lennon run and won the tournament, Calgar's gone up, the Ballistis, Dreadnoughts have gone up, and the Company of Heroes all went up. As well as this, he did run Stormlance, and they've just had a hit to one of their more useful stratagems, which isn't the greatest. Well, Space Marines were in a really good place, especially when you restrict the supplements from getting the +1 to wound. I think there was a lot of issues, especially with the Blood Angel detachments using that. But now that we're back to just Codex Space Marines getting it, they weren't meta breaking. A good player could get the best out of them, and they were seeing a lot of play on the top tables from good players. But the average to poor players would still struggle to get mediocre results out of them, because they are still quite a difficult faction to play. Even though they've got a lot of options, you make one or two mistakes, the army can crumble away as if it doesn't exist. And it does seem to be the case that any time another detachment starts getting a bit of love, getting a bit of tabletop action, it's in the limelight, it always gets hit by GW. They seem to really love Gladius. They want that to be the detachment that everyone plays, because every time another detachment does well, it gets hit. We had that with the Ironstorm, we've had it with Vanguard, and now Stormlance has been taking this hit as well. Space Marines lost a fair few tricks. Being able to Deep Strike Centurions allowed you to get quite a bit of high damage right at the start of the game, which you wouldn't be able to. Now, they have knocked them down in points, but you have lost quite a valuable trick. There's not many units you're really going to be able to get this same output as you could with them. Also, taking the Deep Strike and being able to charge after shooting, that was quite useful on the Reavers, so you could get in and use the objective control reduction ability to try and flip objectives. Removing that makes Reavers not as good as they were. They're still a useful unit, but they're not really anything you're going to lead into. They're a tool that you can use now and then For an ability that wasn't really being overly abused and you wasn't really seeing it that often, to give them a little bit of hit that is a little bit strange, because if you're going to do that, then you should give something back somewhere else. Like usual with GW, they love putting the popular stuff up that are used by gamers. Unfortunately, with Space Marines, they never bring other stuff down. When you're looking across the board, there's a lot of options out there that are solid data sheets, but they're just far too expensive. They've even very strangely preemptively put points up on the Whirlwind, because with the Eldar coming in, with their meta, especially having quite a lot of toughness 3 units, they've put in place an ability to stop Space Marine players trying to play into them really well by getting rid of the Whirlwind with its indirect, which you can use to really nullify the ability of Eldar players to hold on to objectives. At this point, it's probably clear that Gladius is still on top by quite a while. The only one close to it really for consistency is the Librarius, the Grotmus detachment. That's a really solid detachment and fun to play, but it is a bit harder to pilot than the Gladius. The good news that Space Marines, they're still in a good place, they're a solid faction to have, and they are probably a middle A tier faction at the moment. With such a big codex, there's still plenty of good options out there. There's going to be a little bit of experimentation that's needed to try and get the best out of Space Marines until the next data slate comes along. With Tau's excellent new detachment coming out, there's going to see a lot of play, and it's going to be quite devastating to play against. We might see across the board a pivot into a lot of smaller, cheaper units, just to minimise the impact that it can have. As well as this, with Eldar looking very strong out the gate, and they've got a lot of T3 bodies in the codex that are really good. As long as they're not doing the movement shenanigans in and out of transport, indirect might be back on the table to deal with these threats. What do you think? Leave a comment below. Where do you think Space Marines currently sit in the meta? Take it easy. I'll see you next time.